The so-called marriage of iron and rye is the nickname for the political alliance brokered by Otto von Bismarck, the first chancellor of unified Germany, between the Junkers, the landed nobility mainly based in Prussia, and the newly emerging capitalists in heavy industries concentrated in the Rhineland in the west. In 1879, Bismarck ditched his long-standing coalition partner, the National Liberals, who supported, among other things, free trade. He forged a new protectionist power bloc by getting the politically powerful rye-producing Junkers to accept tariff protection for the Rhinish heavy industries like iron and steel, then struggling against superior British producers. In order to do that, he offered the Junkers tariff protection against cheap American grains that were beginning to flood the European markets thanks to increased settlement in the North American prairies and the development of railways that could bring the grains from the prairies to the main seaports on the East Coast. This alliance between the rye producers and the iron producers, brokered by the Iron Chancellor, propelled the German economy to new heights. It allowed the new heavy industries, iron, steel, machinery, chemicals, to grow behind protective walls and eventually catch up with the leading producers in Britain. It meant that food was more expensive than it would have been under free trade in agriculture. But then most people had a higher income as a result of Germany's more successful industrialization, so higher food prices didn't matter as much. Bismarck's legacy didn't end with the development of German heavy industries. There is another legacy of his that has had an even bigger impact, and far beyond Germany: the establishment of the welfare state. Many people think that the welfare state is the product of so-called progressive political forces, like the New Deal Democrats in the US, the British Labour Party, or the Scandinavian Social Democratic parties. But it is actually the arch-conservative Bismarck who created it first. In 1871, soon after unifying Germany, which had until then been divided into dozens of political entities, Bismarck introduced an insurance program protecting workers from industrial accidents. Although it covered only a limited range of workers, it was the world's first public insurance for working people. Once he had consolidated his power with the marriage of iron and rye in 1879, Bismarck accelerated his push for welfare measures and introduced public health insurance in 1883 and a public pension in 1889, both unprecedented anywhere in the world. In 1884, he extended his earlier industrial accident insurance to cover all workers. So, Bismarck can be credited for establishing the first welfare state in history. Bismarck didn't introduce the welfare state because he was a socialist, as anyone supporting the welfare state is apt to be called these days. He was a famous anti-socialist, but he was acutely aware that unless workers were given protection against the major shocks of life, industrial accidents, illnesses, old age, unemployment, and so on, they would be attracted to socialism. In other words, Bismarck initiated those welfare schemes in order to keep socialism at bay. Exactly for this reason, many socialists, especially in Germany, were against the welfare state in the beginning. They saw it as a way of buying off workers and stopping them from overthrowing capitalism through a revolution and so establishing socialism. However, over time, reformist tendencies beat revolutionary ones within left-wing movements, and parties on the left came to accept and actively push for the expansion of the welfare state, especially following the Great Depression. After the Second World War, even many centre-right parties in European countries came to embrace the welfare state, as they realized that giving security to ordinary citizens was vital for achieving political stability, especially in the face of systemic competition from the Soviet bloc countries. It's not just in terms of its origin that the welfare state is misunderstood. So is its very nature. The common misunderstanding about the welfare state is that its main function is to give supposedly free stuff to poorer people. Income support, pensions, housing subsidies, healthcare, unemployment benefits, and so on. These freebies are, it is believed, paid for by the taxes that richer people pay. So the welfare state is seen as a vehicle for poorer people to free ride on richer people, as expressed in the common British insult, welfare scroungers. In fact, of course, welfare benefits are not free. Everyone pays for them. Many of the welfare benefits people get are financed by social security contributions that most taxpayers pay. In addition, most people pay income tax, although poorer people pay a lower proportion of their incomes in income tax than richer people do. And even the poorest people who are exempt from income tax or social security contributions pay indirect taxes when they buy things: VAT, general sales tax, import tariffs, and so on. In fact, these taxes are proportionally much more burdensome on the poor. For example, in the UK, as of 2018, the poorest 20% of households paid 27% of their income in indirect taxes, while the richest 20% paid only about 14%. Understood this way, no one is getting free stuff through the welfare state, unless they are corporations that pay their workers below the living wage, making it necessary for those workers to rely on the welfare state for survival, while not paying their fair share of taxes by registering their income in tax havens. If anything looks free, it is because it is free at the point of access. The welfare state is better seen as a package of social insurances covering eventualities that can happen to anyone, collectively purchased by all citizens. It may have an element of downward redistribution of income, but that is not even its main role. The point of the welfare state is that, as citizens and long-term residents, we all get the same package of insurances at a lower price by buying in bulk. The best way to illustrate this point is to compare healthcare expenditure in the United States, which is the only rich country that does not have universal public health insurance, with that in other rich countries. As a proportion of GDP, the US spends at least 40% more and up to 2.5 times more on healthcare than other similarly rich countries do. Despite this, it has the worst health records in the rich world, meaning that health is far more expensive in the US than in other rich countries. There are various explanations for this, but one important reason is that the American healthcare system is fragmented, and so can't benefit from collective purchases as much as its counterparts in other countries that have a more unified healthcare system. For example, each hospital or hospital group has to buy its own medicines and equipment, rather than buying them through the national system that benefits from a bulk buy discount, while each medical insurance company, as well as charging higher premiums being a profit-seeking entity, has to have its own system of administration rather than a unified one. Some of you may not be convinced of this collective cost-saving argument, but if you've participated in collective purchase schemes like Groupon, you will have already bought into the idea behind the welfare state. The welfare state has become the most effective way of dealing with the inevitable insecurity that capitalism creates in its pursuit of economic dynamism. What's more, if designed well, the welfare state can make capitalist economies even more dynamic, as it reduces people's resistance to new technologies and new working practices. The Nordic countries are the best examples of this. No wonder the welfare state has been spreading and growing, despite the continuous assault on it by neoliberal ideology since the 1980s.